Hey, I'm Stephanie, and it's time to stumble into style. Welcome to Signature Style Sunday, my weekly web series in which I document my attempt to distill personality into style using mainly what I already own. Today, I have to be honest, I'm kind of winging it because things have been crazy. I know a lot of us have been watching the news, and it is utterly heartbreaking. And not only is it heartbreaking and scary, but it is hitting especially close to home for me. A bunch of my friends and colleagues have already taken in Ukrainian refugee families into their homes. And so I feel like everything is very close by. And I also have other friends that are currently on their way to the border to offer humanitarian aid. And it's a lot. And especially because I feel like there's so much potential for it to escalate. It's it's a little nerve-wracking. But the thing is, on top of all that, normal life has to go on. You know, people that are outside of the conflict, we still have our jobs, we still have rent to pay, errands to run, and it just seems so weird to continue living our mundane lives while so much is being destroyed so close to us. So not only is like they're that. But this past week has been kind of crazy for me at work because a colleague of mine ended up having a personal emergency and I had to take on a bunch of her projects. In a normal week, it would have been stressful, but it would have been fine. However, I had a lot to do this week already because I was awarded a grant several months ago. And that's great news. Not complaining about that at all, because it means that I get to realize an artistic project that's very important to me. However, the interim report is due on Tuesday. And so I was planning on working on that this past week. However, because of all of the unexpected extra work I had this week, I didn't even have time to think about it. And I'm already booked for next week, which meant the only time I had to do this progress report was this weekend. So I had to basically fit 4 days of work into 2 days, and it's just been a lot. So, yeah, I'm a little bit overwhelmed, but my style brain was still working in the background. And so I thought I'd talk about subconscious style today. What do I mean by subconscious style? Well, I'm working from home this weekend. Not a single soul can see me. Nobody cares what I look like. I could have worn my rattiest hoodie to do all my work this weekend. But what did I choose to put on? My boss blazer. This is the sort of thing that I wear when I'm hired to work as a consultant on a production. I don't know why it makes me feel like a boss. Maybe it's because it's fitted and because it has this kind of broad silhouette and it makes me feel very authoritative. All I know is that this is what I wear when I want to get down to business. And this is what I wore this weekend, which I just thought was kind of an odd choice. But as I began to think about it more, I realized this subconscious choice wasn't odd at all. This grant is very important to me because the project I'm working on is very important to me. And I think I was feeling very out of control over the last couple of weeks for all of the reasons that I mentioned. And so putting on my boss blazer for me, I think was my subconscious mind's attempt to try to get some control back in my life. And I think it worked because I had a heck of a lot to do and I was a little bit worried that I wasn't going to get it all done. And I was actually finished earlier than I thought I would be, and I'm really happy with the results. And I'm not saying it's because this blazer is magic, but I do think that it had something to do with my attitude. It was my mind affecting my body. And as a performer, this is something that I find really interesting because it's part of some of the very basic fundamental techniques that I use when I perform. When I first began singing on stages, I used to suffer from really dramatic stage fright. I would get to a venue and I would be getting ready, and all of a sudden I'd be thinking about, what if I forget the words? What if I trip and fall? What if this happens? So many things can go wrong, and my brain seemed to just focus on every single one of them. And the more I thought about these things, the faster my heart would beat, the shallower my breath would become, and the more I would start to shake and my hands would get clammy and sweaty. And before long, I was not really hyperventilating, but almost. And to be honest, it's very difficult to give a professional vocal performance when you're on the verge of hyperventilating. So I had to learn how to get it under control. And the mind-body connection is fundamental in performance theory. So for example, there's been studies out there. I mean, you can look at Johns Hopkins University. You can look at several different renowned institutions. And studies have repeatedly shown that there is definitely a connection between the state of our mind and the state of our body. So our mind definitely has an effect on our body in several different ways. And that also works in performance. Now, when I get nervous before I perform, I've learned how to deal with it. And what I do is, instead of trying to somehow logically influence my mind to think calmer thoughts, all I do is focus on calming my body. I deliberately take very slow, deep breaths deep into my belly. I try to release any tension that I'm feeling in my fingers and my hands. And as I begin to let those things go, and as my heart rate slows, my mind also slows. And all of those kind of apocalyptic thoughts that go on in my head before some performances all of a sudden start to fade into the background. And I become much calmer. That doesn't necessarily mean that I am totally zen by the time I get on stage, because I think a degree of nerves kind of keeps you really on your game. But it gets my nerves under control to a point where I can do my job and I can perform the way I want to. And so that's like the perfect example of the body influencing the mind instead of the mind influencing the body. It's kind of a cycle. You can go either way. That's what I think was happening with my subconscious mind this weekend. I think that this performance training might have become so deeply rooted in me that my subconscious automatically, almost like a reflex, went back to that and thought, okay, how can I get through this weekend where I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm feeling stressed out? How can I help myself? And I think my subconscious mind went, you know what? We got to use this mind-body connection. We've got to make the body feel like it's the boss so that the mind can be anchored again. And so what did my subconscious do? It gravitated towards this boss blazer. And when I wear this, it's a little bit restrictive, which means I can't comfortably slouch in this blazer. I have to sit and stand kind of tall in order to feel comfortable. And anytime my posture is open and broad like this, it's like a power pose. It makes me feel like I'm in charge. And I was able to really catch up on everything I needed to do this weekend. And I feel like I was much more successful than I was fearing I would be. And I think it was partially because of my style choices. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this information. I'm not even sure if it's interesting to anyone else. But I just thought I would document it because, at least at this point in time, I think it's kind of interesting. And I needed something to talk about today. So thank you so much for putting up with me and for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a wonderful week and that we can all remember that even stumbling can be a form of moving forward. So let's stumble in style.